My best friend hid the sentence "I hate Jews" into my resume, resulting in 5 months of unemployment. What's something a good friend has done to ruin your friendship forever? Best friend from as far back as I can remember got himself a brand new Subaru WRX and wanted to show it to me. I hopped in and we went for a little drive, then suddenly he says, "Last time I took this corner I nailed it." I was a little confused and started yelling as he sped up to about 60 miles per hour. Then he pulled the air brake and tried to drift it. He fishtailed and wrapped my side around a tree, snapping my femur in half and breaking several ribs. My leg was trapped but he was fine. He then got out of the car, sat down on the curb and called his mom to tell her he crashed his car. They used the jaws of life to get me out, and at the hospital I ended up with a pulmonary embolism that killed me twice on the operating table. Needless to say, we don't speak anymore. That was 5 years ago. Cutting the wiring harness in 2 of my cars because he thought it'd be funny. No, it was not funny, it was just expensive. My husband's best friend of 10 years brought his car to our garage. He drove off the road into the side rail, totaled it in a drunken crash, and my husband went to him late in the night on a work night to pick up his friend from the crash miles and miles away. This friend was a wreck. He mentioned that he did not want to deal with insurance writing the car off, and thus asked my husband to fix all the necessary parts on the car. So we got to work, ordered expensive parts. Mechanics spent a lot of hours on this car. Suddenly one day, the friend won't answer his phone. We keep calling him because we need him to pay for the parts we have been ordering and for the car. He refuses to answer his phone for over a month. Then one day, he has his insurance people call us to write off the car. We say sure, that's fine, but the friend still needs to pay for the parts he had us buy. Hundreds of dollars worth of parts we had to buy. Turns out, the friend told his insurance agency that he did not give us permission to buy these parts, so therefore, he refuses to pay us. We confronted him at his house, but he must have told this lie to his family as well, because they would not answer the door. We eventually called and got a hold of him, just to have him not listen to a word we say, and hang up on us and block our numbers and us on FB. We lost over $700 out of the garage's pocket. We had no written agreement stating that he agreed for us to buy all the necessary parts and fix his car, because like I mentioned, they were best friends for over 10 years. So there was nothing legally that we could do. He really screwed us over. This just happened this year. Verbal agreements aren't worth the paper they aren't written on, it ducks, but it's true. Edit. I meant to write it sucks, but I like ducks better. My best friend since post-adolescence, from middle school until age 32, almost 20 years, had an affair with my wife, now ex-wife. It was particularly nasty seeing that as the marriage was obviously having problems, I was taking him to dinner drinks to discuss my woes and pick his brains on how to save my marriage. One notably humiliating thing would be when I told him, "Yeah dude, she told me she thinks she wants to sleep with someone else. I don't know what to do." This was basically a message she intentionally passed through me to him to let him know she was ready to take the affair to a more full-on physical level. Nice, eh? 3 kids lost their family for these 2 selfish people. My boyfriend helped her move. She offered to reward him with a handy. He declined. She didn't think it would be a big deal. It was. I made my best friend an engagement ring for his GF. I'm a goldsmith. Mailed it to him before he gave me any money. Stupid, I know, but he was the last person on the planet I thought would screw me. I almost lost my house because I had to cover the costs of the ring. Perhaps take up poopsmithing and mail those wares to him instead. My now ex-best friend married my ex-husband after she got knocked up. I admit, when I heard they were getting divorced, a part of me was cheerfully delighted. People should really stop jumping into marriage. I was dating a girl who was in a wheelchair, had gone out for about 2 weeks now, went to lunch with some friends, saw her walking around with another guy hanging on his arm, called her to double check, it was her. What, how did she pull that off? And furthermore, why would she try something like that? I used to live with my very good friend, Bill. I worked nights, and generally would come home around 11:30 PM. One night, I came home to find Bill, his girlfriend, and my ex sitting on our sofa drinking. He promptly greeted me with, "We left the door open earlier, and your cat ran away. No one offered to help me look for her." In his defense, Bill and his girlfriend later confronted me and asked if I was uncomfortable having my ex over. I said I was, and I appreciated them asking. They promised me they wouldn't invite her over again. 1 week later, I found the same situation, minus the missing cat. I later found out the reason Bill suddenly started inviting her over was because he wanted to have a threesome with her and his girlfriend. I told him the next day I was moving out. I gave him 2 months to find another roommate. Not me, but a friend of mine's mum had her friend over. The friend fell down the stairs and broke her leg, completely due to her own clumsiness. She then tried to sue my friend's family. She didn't win, but after all this tried to restart the friendship she once had. The family were pretty astounded that this bee still had the balls to even talk to them after all the crap they'd been put through. This happened to relatives of mine. The friend sued the woman's husband over some work he did for her. The issue wasn't even related to the work or time frame of it. Obviously he won. And then this friend expected that the friendship would continue. People are freaking weird. My boyfriend and I let her stay at our place for the summer rather than go back home from college. She had a bad relationship with her parents. It was a 600 square foot, 1-bedroom apartment and we were 3 people. She got the bedroom and we were in the living room. It was more spacious. Midsummer, she got mono. Her parents wanted to fly her home to take care of her. She refused, saying she felt fine and could take care of herself. A week later she told, not asked, me that her stepdad would be coming out and staying in our apartment for an indefinite time to take care of her while she was sick. I asked if we could discuss other arrangements because I wasn't comfortable having a man I didn't know in our apartment indefinitely. She called me a C and a bad friend, hurled insults at me for half an hour, and then announced she was moving out. I still don't understand how that could possibly seem like a reasonable first response under any circumstances. My best friend in high school was also in the same English class as me. We were in grade 12, so we were heading off to university the year after. For those who are not familiar with Canada's education system, grade 12 marks are the most important. We had this essay assignment to do where we had to critique this paper. Long story short, he straight up copied 5 of the 6 pages of my work and handed it in. Teacher found out and confronted us both. After many talks with a couple of teachers and the vice principal, I didn't have any repercussions. Luckily for my so-called friend, he just had to do some volunteer work around the school. I almost didn't make it to university because of him. Needless to say, I don't talk to him anymore. TLDR. Butthole best friend copied my essay and handed it in. Almost didn't get into college. I like the fact that it turned out good for you, and not the other way around. My best friend from ages 1-12 once creeped up behind me, grabbed my shoulders and kneed me as hard as she could up my backside. She then sprinted off and hid while I was writhing around in pain. She broke my coccyx, and to this day, 12 when it happened, 27 now, it hurts to sit in the same position for more than an hour or so. Also, walking long distances sets it off too, which is annoying as I used to love walking. Moved together with my best friend of 4 years a few years ago to go to university. He brought his GF of a few months. I paid for the apartment, and after 6 months I flunked a few exams, dropped out, and decided to move back home. And then they start hassling me for not having put out food money. 1 month. When I asked when they were going to pay me back for the apartment, I was told that's not the same. Haven't talked to them for 2 years now, or seen any of the money. After years of her manipulating and lying to me and everyone we knew, she had this crazy web of lies she so delicately constructed, but one day she was sloppy and it all came undone. The last straw was when she continuously cheated on 2 guys at the same time over a period of 3 months, got pregnant by one, then told the other guy, who is still one of my best friends, that it was his. She told me she was pregnant in December. I went with her to the clinic for the abortion, so I know 100% the timeline. Told him in January she needed $500 for an abortion. She cried and cried for the money, but he is the sweetest guy ever and he begged her to keep it because despite knowing he was being cheated on, he wanted to give the kid a shot at life. She got pissed that he wouldn't pay up and said forget it, she'd find a way to take care of it. playing her famous pity victim card. Then she faked being in pain for 2 weeks because she supposedly took the abortion pill. She did, just a whole month earlier, and got him to buy her weed and candy and crap to make her feel better. I knew none of this was going on until months later when him and I were talking about it and our timelines were off. Then I realized why. During December she tried to get me to hate him by telling me a lot of cruel lies about him, which worked and got me to not want to talk to him for a long time. During this time she also pitted my, still, 2 best friends against me. They are the sweetest girls I've ever met, but that bee is straight up poison, and every person who has ever come in contact with her, literally, changes under her bat crap crazy, life-fueled friendship. We all eventually figured it out, since she made it so that none of us talked to each other at all at one point. She was feeding all of us different lies about each other. Once we realized something didn't seem right, we talked and realized she is an insane human being and dropped her like a bag of flaming dog shit. And we all lived happily ever after. Except her. She got arrested for stealing from her job as Ross. Her job as Ross. It was David Schwimmer all along. My best friend housemate, D, whom I trusted like family, sent a guy I hardly knew into my room to have sex with me after I had passed out drunk. We'll call him Tristan because that was his name. I woke up to Tristan fondling me and kissing my neck and pushed him off and asked WTF though he was doing. His response was, D said it would be okay. I was furious. Not at Tristan. Frankly, I couldn't care less about that shat. I was furious at D and said that I was going to kick his butt, which I would not have been very successful at seeing as he weighed almost twice as much as me and was all a muscle. I hoped D wouldn't have hit me back, but who knows. I never got to that part because Tristan held me down in my bed. I tried to push him off but he was too strong. He bear hugged me and kept me there while I cried myself to sleep. Luckily, he had the scruples not to rape me, although he was still kissing and fondling me while he held me there. I was in complete shock and withdrew from school that semester and flew home the next morning. I was always treated like one of the guys, but when it came down to it, D showed how little he thought of me. TLDR. I learned that the guy I loved like a brother thought of me as nothing more than a W when he sent a friend in to frick me when I was passed out. God, that is freaking horrible. I'm sorry. My friends hid a small baggie of flour in my suitcase when I crossing the border. It was the first party I ever went to in high school. Also the first time I drank, so I didn't know my limit. I passed out in my friend's bed and her older brother took advantage of me while I was dead asleep. Next morning I got a bunch of people asking about it, saying there was a used condom in the bed. I vaguely, SP, remember waking up during one point of it, but that was it. When I tried talking to her about it, she said she didn't want to hear about anything her brother has done, that she has her own problems to worry about. I stopped talking to her after that. Not only did that ruin our friendship, but what her brother did made everyone at school call me a W&S. It didn't even matter that I was passed out, so what he did was rape me. I had a friend from school. We were neighbors, played sported together, knew her for over a decade, etc. So in college we moved in together. It ended up about 3 years later because she was a compulsive liar, lying about everything, including the fact she was kicked out of school for failing everything. To this day I'm not sure if her parents know she never graduated from the top biz school. She was kicked out after 2 years. I confronted her and asked for the truth. She admitted some stuff and kept lying. She went through periods where she would go out every single night and bring drugged guys home. I had to kick out a dodgy stranger who had tagged along with one of her hookups and wanted to sleep in our home. Twice I was woken up by coked up dudes entering my room screaming at 5 AM. She tried to manipulate every single new friend I made, trying to control them and set them against me. I told her to move out. I never talked to her again. I have run into her twice and turned around to avoid her. Good riddance. I actually cried from relief when I got rid of her. Toxic people are the worst. Sounds like she had serious issues. You couldn't have helped her on your own. You did the right thing. Tried to convince me that I should be adult and mature about the fact that he wanted to date my girlfriend of 4 years, 3 weeks after she dumped me. My best friend hates the thought of me having a girlfriend and will threaten not talking to me if I do have one. When we were both a few years younger, she'd also tell a lot of people that I was gay. I'm straight, which at first I thought was just a joke, but now that I think of it, seems to be equally strange. If she were interested in me, this would be perfectly understandable, but she has a boyfriend whom she is very loyal to and is planning to marry one day. It has not ruined our friendship. It has just led to me keeping my friendship with her and my relationship with So's being completely separate. My best friend is still dear to me. We've been through a lot, have a ton in common, and have had many good times with each other. I just wish she didn't assume that me having a girlfriend would change everything. It's a bit more complicated than that, but that is the summary of the situation in a nutshell. Also, I'm normally very good at reading people's actions, but I cannot understand why she'd do any of this whatsoever, so if anyone would care to shed some light on this for me, it'd be greatly appreciated. This thread has convinced me to always proofread everything I ever write. Well, that didn't work out so good so far. Back when my husband and I were still in the dating phase, I had a female friend who lied about being brutally raped by my husband, in hopes that I would break up with him so she could have him. When the truth finally came out, she defended herself with, "No one understands what it's like to be me. She didn't think she did anything wrong." Freaking crazy man. Oh. I've had quite a few friends screw me over in a big way. One roommate, who was my best friend at the time, decided one day she didn't want to live with me anymore and locked me out of the apartment. She refused to let me back in, took whatever things of mine she wanted and threw the rest out. Please keep in mind this was 1 month after I moved to a new city and started a new job. I literally had to start all over again, not to mention the scores of pictures and such from my childhood that she threw out. A few years later she apologized and blamed her husband for the whole thing. She wanted to be friends. I said no thank you, please go frick yourself. My ex-BF had 2 broken legs while we were dating. He broke the second leg the night that he closed the sale of his house, and the type of break required 3 months off his feet and 2 surgeries. He needed a place to stay, and someone to help walk his 2 11-year-old dogs, who were awesome. BTW, I ended up quitting my job to help him out, which seemed okay since we were planning to move to California from NJ together once he was healed up. Of course, once he was back on his feet and able to get around on his own, he packed up his crap and moved out. Never spoke another word to me other than to call and ask about his mail. Absolutely broke my heart, and now I don't trust anyone. Those are the 2 suckiest. Nowadays I'm super selective about who I'll let in my life. I had that I'm a doormat. Please walk all over me tattoo removed from my forehead as well. This girl was hated by everyone in the school. I was the only person being nice to her. She was having boyfriend troubles, so I told her there are nice guys out there. Introduced her to the guy I was interested in to show her that guys can be friends with girls and that there are genuinely nice people out there. A couple of weeks later she was calling me a S and whatnot for having an amazing boyfriend who she had fallen in love with. That's right folks. Weeks. She is threatening suicide and blaming it on me. Next week I find out I was dumped via Facebook when her and my ex changed their relationship status to no longer listed as single. A couple of months later she goes around calling me a bush pig and a virginess because I was interested in some other guy who apparently she was in love with, despite being engaged to my ex. Time descriptors are accurate. That B was crazy. A friend of mine loved drama. I was a lame, quiet girl and was grateful to have a well-known, cute girl as a friend. Well, she was pining over this guy who was a bit of an butthole and would harass people who had scars from self-harm and berated them. One morning he was ruthlessly harassing me while she wasn't around. I tried to ignore him and he decided he didn't like being ignored and straight up slapped me across the face. I was pretty freaking stunned. He paled. I turned and silently walked out. I found the girl, told her what happened. She made a huge show about hating him and how he was going to get his butt kicked. Well, by the end of the day they were dating. That was when I decided to say, frick that, and told her off. Felt good. I've known this guy since we were 6 years old. Tried to help him with his courses. He quit his studies. Tried to help him get a job. He sued his employer for allegedly causing him back problems. They didn't. He had them before that. Tried to get him to quit alcohol. Every time I see him he drinks more. Last month, I tried to get him to meet a girl. He got world class B pissy because I told him she was a nice girl that wouldn't put out after a couple beers and wanted me to drive him home. My last words to him were, "Get there yourself, you ungrateful bastard," and I got a punch for that, which made me all the more certain I made the right choice. Moral of story: stop trying to help. During arts and crafts in grade 6, friends and I were fooling around with stuff. Friend takes scissors and starts making snipping motions at my crotch, and I think that he'd be nuts, no pun intended, to actually snip my crotch. I don't do anything about it. The nutter, again, no pun intended, actually cuts through my jeans and I feel a sharp pain. My balls were bleeding for the next 15 minutes, and I had a very awkward nurse treat me while I was wincing in pain. Knocked out the W, no pun intended, when I came back from the office. Teacher didn't even say anything. These puns all seem intended. 2 of my friends began cracking jokes at a sleepover about how funny it would be if I got raped by someone. It was kinda horrifying watching how genuinely they were laughing at the idea. Never slept over again. 2 years of being the best of best friends with these 2, and for some reason in a matter of weeks it became a giant nightmare. More of when I was in 5th grade. I had just moved back to the States the year prior. Well, I made friends like most people do, but then near the end of the year my so-called friend came up with 2 of his buddies, got them to hold me down and tried to force feed me an almond. I'm deathly allergic to tree nuts. I go into anaphylactic shock. Again, that was way back in 5th grade. My first thought was, you're an idiot. But then I realized I haven't looked at the majority of the information on my resume in years probably. Sorry to hear, man. Your friends are dong and I agree. Unforgivable. They fricked your career up. Had a friend that I was really close to for a while. At the time I was being pretty severely emotionally abused by my boyfriend's mom, whom I was living with at the time, to the point that she would berate me, scream at me, tell me I was worthless, complain to everyone we knew mutually about me behind my back, and even went so far as to go to my place of employment and badmouth me to my boss, which almost resulted in me losing my job when I came in later that week. At the time I was relying on this friend for emotional support, and for a while she did seem pretty supportive, but then she started spending more time with my boyfriend's mom, and I don't really know what happened. Her personality took a sudden shift, and she went from being supportive to pulling me aside in the middle of a mall outing and chewing me out for complaining about my boyfriend's mom, and not being friendly toward her, while she was emotionally abusing me. That was the first straw. After that, she went on to start insulting me, or trying to help me in other ways that were uncalled for, such as repeatedly calling me obese at 150 pounds, and telling me I was in pain all the time because of the fact that I was fat, or telling me that I was overreacting when I first found out about my life-threatening allergy to wheat, when even my doctor had confirmed it, and I had been to the hospital several times as a result. These sort of things kept happening, and I've just lost all faith in what friendship we might have had. The biggest thing for me though, was her actively refusing to support me through what was very obvious emotional abuse at the time. Something that I still have to go through therapy for today. My closest friend started banging my ex right after she dumped me, behind my back. Like, I don't think the changing of the relationship status had even occurred on Facebook. Someone just asked me one day kind of nonchalantly, "Doesn't it bother you that derpeth?" and didn't even wait a day to tap that. That was how I found out. To this day he holds. Why are you even mad she broke up with you? I feel like this one belongs in our justice porn. I'm not even mad. She got pregnant. They both failed out of college, and, you ready for the kicker? A mutual friend told me it wasn't even his kid. Unconfirmed. But still. Frick yes, after all that. Slept with my, now ex, girlfriend of 4 years, and when I confronted him about it he wouldn't give me the time of day to actually talk about it and pretty much just threw all the blame on everyone else. So that friendship no longer exists. When my dad died I called my best friend to tell her, and ended up leaving a message. She never called me back. It's been 5 years. According to Facebook, she's thriving, with no excuse not to call me back. It came close a few times, but he hung in there until he flushed himself down the toilet. Thoroughly. I am 47 dang years old. The first clues, which I ignored, happened when I was 16. He worked at a pharmacy that sold beer. He sold himself some, and we walked down the train tracks to the wrong side and set the beer outside the rear door to his house, which was opposite a landing from the kitchen down to his basement room. We enter through the front door. His father, inexplicably, or perhaps he's done this before, opens the rear door and asks, "What's this now?" Him. "Oh, GR8 presents brought that." Fast forward to my mid-20s. Me and some mates from college are touring some US city, forget which. We pass a homeless man rifling a garbage can just as he scores a half-eaten burger and goes to town. My friend lets out with, "MMMMM. I bet that's going to be delicious." I freaking read him out right there. Went freaking off on him for being a fricked up butthole with absolutely zero sense of compassion, empathy, or freaking perspective. Because he seemed to achieve instant remorse, I did not issue the beatdown he needed, and I forgave him. Fast forward to relatively modern times, the eve of my wedding. I am marrying a woman 13 years my senior. Most guests are out of town. I happen to be walking down the hallway of the hotel where all of the out-of-town guests were staying. He did not know I was behind him. None of my friends did. And he asks, "I wonder if he's giving it to Granny tonight." Laughs all around. She asked for years after that, "Have you heard from Crocker recently?" Name not changed. BC he owns this crap. I always lied. Yes. Number. Not recently. Whatever answer was least complicated. She would never hear the Granny story, and my former friend would never hear from me again. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.